I still remember that night clearly, not because it was the scariest night of my life, but because that was the night I realized I had never been alone in that house. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 23 years old. I'm a graduate student, and up until October of last year, I would have laughed at anyone who told me that ghosts were real. I want you to understand that before I tell you the rest. When my uncle passed away, he left me his house. It wasn't something I expected, we weren't particularly close. But he had no children, no wife, no one else to leave it to. So it fell to me. A 3-story house in a quiet neighborhood with old wooden floors, high ceilings, and windows that rattled whenever the wind picked up. The kind of house that looks beautiful in the daytime and makes you uncomfortable at night. My friends thought I was lucky. Free housing in grad school? They would have killed for it. And I agreed with them at first. I moved in on a Friday in early October. The first week was completely normal. I unpacked my boxes, bought some furniture, figured out which floorboards creaked the loudest, found the best place to get Wi-Fi. Normal stuff, ordinary life. The second week, small things started feeling off. I would come downstairs in the morning and find the kitchen window unlocked, even though I clearly remembered locking it the night before. I would leave my notebook on the dining table and find it on the counter instead. Small things. The kind of things you explain away before they even become a thought. Must have forgotten. Must have moved it myself. Must have been half asleep. That's what the brain does, right? It protects you. It finds a rational explanation for everything so that you don't have to sit with the uncomfortable alternative. I was very good at being rational. I made it all the way to the third week before I couldn't explain something away anymore. It was a Tuesday night. Around 1 in the morning, I was at my desk working on a paper, headphones in, half a cup of cold coffee beside me. The house was quiet. I was focused. And then from below me, from the basement, I heard it. A single thud. Heavy, deliberate, like something had been dropped or knocked over from a height. I pulled my headphones off, sat very still, listened. Nothing. The silence after a strange sound is somehow worse than the sound itself. You keep waiting for a follow-up, something to confirm what you heard or to contradict it. The silence just sits there, offers nothing. I told myself it was the pipes. Old houses have noisy pipes. I told myself it was the house settling. Old houses do that. I listed every rational explanation I could think of, and then I put my headphones back in and kept working. I didn't go down to the basement that night, and I want to be honest about why. It wasn't because I was being smart. It was because my uncle, the last time I spoke to him, which was months before he died, told me something strange. He said, "If you ever end up in that house, stay out of the basement. There's nothing down there worth seeing." I didn't ask him what he meant. I should have. That night, I stayed at my desk until the sun came up. And at exactly 2:59 inches the morning I heard it again. Not a thud this time. Footsteps. I want to be very precise about what I heard, because I've replayed it in my mind so many times that I could describe it to you in exact detail. It was slow, measured. Each step had weight to it. Not the random creak of a settling house. Not the scatter of an animal that had gotten inside. These were deliberate footsteps. Someone walking, unhurried, like they had every right to be there. They moved from one end of the basement to the other, and then they stopped, right below my desk. I sat completely frozen for what felt like several minutes. I couldn't hear my own breathing. I couldn't feel anything in my hands. I just sat there, staring at the floor beneath my feet, and thought about the fact that there was something on the other side of it. I called my friend Marcus. It was almost 3 in the morning, but he picked up. "Someone's in my basement," I whispered. He told me to call the police. I told him I wasn't sure. He said that's exactly when you're supposed to call. I said I needed to look first. I grabbed a flashlight, went downstairs, and stood in front of the basement door. It was open. Not wide open, just a crack, maybe 2 inches. And from that crack came a smell I can only describe as old and floral, like a drawer full of dried flowers that hadn't been opened in years. I pushed the door open, went down the stairs, swept the flashlight across the basement from corner to corner. It was full of old furniture, boxes, a broken standing lamp, a rolled-up rug in the corner that had gone grey with dust. Everything covered in a thick, uniform layer of dust, the kind that accumulates over years. Undisturbed. No one was there. I exhaled. I almost laughed at myself. And then I swept the flashlight one more time, just to be thorough. In the far corner, there was one box that didn't match the others. Every other box in that basement was buried under the same heavy layer of dust. But this one looked like someone had wiped it clean recently. The cardboard was dry and pale and bare, while everything around it sat under what looked like years of neglect. I stood there for a long moment, looking at it. Then I turned around and went back upstairs. I called my uncle's lawyer the next morning, the one who had handled the estate. I asked him if he knew anything about the house's history, previous owners. Anything like that. He paused for a long time before answering. "Mr. Mercer, your uncle never told you about the woman." I said no. A woman died in that house. Before your uncle bought it. In the basement, actually. She had lived alone, elderly, no family. A neighbor found her 3 days after she passed. She left everything behind. Your uncle was told to leave her belongings undisturbed. He did, as far as I know. I asked him what her name was. "Eleanor Voss," he said. "She died in 1989. I sat with that for the rest of the day. An old woman, a lonely death, belongings left behind in a basement for over 30 years. That night, I told myself I was going to look in the box just once, just to see. Because I am, fundamentally, the kind of person who needs to see things to believe them. I went down at 11. The basement felt different at night, heavier, somehow. The floral smell was there again, faint but distinct. I crossed to the corner and knelt down in front of the box and opened it. Inside, there was a wool cardigan, neatly folded, a small glass bottle with a faded label, a leather journal worn soft with age, and underneath everything a photograph, black and white. A woman in her 60s, I would guess. She was sitting in a garden chair, and she was smiling directly at the camera. On the back of the photograph, in careful handwriting, "Eleanor Voss, 1986. I held the photograph up to the flashlight. She had kind eyes. That was my first thought. She looked like someone's grandmother, someone soft and warm and unthreatening. I set the photograph down and reached for the journal. And that's when the light went out. Not the flashlight. I hadn't brought it in my hand. I'd set it on the floor beside me. All the lights. The basement, the hallway upstairs, everything visible through the door, all of it went dark at once. I grabbed the flashlight. The battery warning light was blinking red. I turned the beam around the room. On the dusty floor, between me and the door, there were footprints, bare footprints, Small, narrow, a woman's, leading from the box, across the room, to the bottom of the stairs. They were pressed clearly into the dust, like someone had walked through very recently. I had not heard anyone walk. I had not seen anyone, but someone had walked past me in the dark. I ran. I am not ashamed to admit that. I ran up the stairs, through the hallway, into the living room, and I sat on the couch with every light in the house switched on. I did not sleep. By morning, I had convinced myself there was a rational explanation. Animals, a trick of the light, imagination amplified by an old story from a lawyer I'd spoken to for 3 minutes. I was still explaining it away. Even then, I called Marcus and told him what had happened. He was quiet for a moment and then said, "You need to talk to the neighbors." There was an elderly woman next door. I had seen her in her garden a few times but never spoken to her. That morning, I knocked on her door. Her name was Ruth. She had lived in that neighborhood for 41 years. She remembered Eleanor Voss very well. She invited me inside and made tea and told me things that I have not been able to stop thinking about since. Eleanor Voss had moved into that house in 1974 after her husband died. She had no children, no living relatives that Ruth knew of. She was quiet, private, and deeply religious, though not in a church-going way. More in a way that felt personal and interior, like a conversation she was having with someone no one else could hear. She talked about the house like it was alive, Ruth said. She used to say it needed a witness. That's what she called it. A witness. Someone who would see it, really see it, and not just pass through. I asked what she meant by that. Ruth set her cup down slowly. Eleanor believed that places hold memories, that a house absorbs everything that happens inside it, every joy, every grief, every moment of quiet. She said the house she lived in had been full of grief for a very long time, and it needed someone to witness that grief, to acknowledge it, so it could rest. And what happened when she died? I asked. She died alone, in the basement, of all places. He used to go down there to think, she told me once. She liked the quiet. Ruth paused. When they found her, she had been there for 3 days. Nobody had known to check on her. I've always felt guilty about that. I asked her about the box, the one with the photograph. Ruth looked at me carefully. You went into the basement. Yes, and you touched her things. I just looked. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Eleanor told me something once, near the end of her life. She said she would leave a part of herself in that house, that whoever came after her would become her witness, whether they wanted to or not. I drove home feeling cold, in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. That night I opened the journal from the box. I don't know why I think I needed to understand, to see who she was, beyond a name and a year and a black and white photograph. Her handwriting was precise and neat. The entries were not dated in order she seemed to write when something moved her, not on a schedule. They were mostly quiet observations. The way light came through the basement window in the afternoon, the sound the house made when it was very cold, the quality of silence in different rooms. And then, near the back, I found an entry that stopped me. It was short, just a few lines. I'm going to read it to you exactly as she wrote it. I have been wondering lately who will come after me, whether they will be curious or frightened, whether they will open the box or leave it alone. I think they will open it. People always do. Curiosity is stronger than fear in the end. When they open it, they will see my face, and I will see theirs. And then we will know each other, and the house will finally have what it needs. Someone who stayed long enough to truly see it. I read it 3 times. Then I looked up. In the doorway of the room, I'm trying to say this accurately, without exaggerating what I saw, there was a shape. It was barely there. The kind of thing you see in the periphery that dissolves when you look directly at it. But, for just a second, standing there in the doorway, there was a figure, small, still, and there was a smell, that same faint, old, floral smell from the basement. I looked directly at the doorway. Nothing, just the hallway. The same old wooden floor. The same walls. But the smell lingered for a long time after. I left the house that night and checked into a hotel. I spent 2 days there trying to decide what to do. I called Marcus. I called my mother. I talked to everyone except the one person I should have talked to, which is a therapist, though I've since corrected that. On the 3rd day, I went back. Not because I was brave, because I had left the photograph on the table and I couldn't stop thinking about it. When I walked in, the house was exactly as I had left it. Quiet, unchanged. The photograph was still on the table. Eleanor Voss, sitting in her garden chair, smiling. I picked it up, and I stood there in the late afternoon light, and I looked at her. Really looked. Not the quick glance I'd given it in the basement. I looked at the way she was sitting comfortable, relaxed. The way her hands were folded in her lap. The way she was smiling, not for the camera, it seemed, but at something just beyond it. I said out loud, feeling faintly ridiculous, "I see you, Eleanor." The house was silent. I sat down at the table and kept looking at the photograph until the light outside started to fade. And then I noticed something I had missed before. In the background of the photograph behind Eleanor, in the shadow of what appeared to be a doorway, there was a shape. It was blurred, slightly out of focus the way backgrounds in old photographs often are. But it was the shape of a person, standing in the doorway, watching. I stared at it for a long time. My hands were completely steady. That surprised me. I expected to feel afraid, but what I felt was something closer to recognition, like looking at something you've always known was there, even when you were pretending you didn't. I turned the photograph over. Read her name and the year again. Eleanor Voss. 1986. Then I turned it back over and looked at the shape in the doorway one more time. It was facing forward, toward the camera, toward Eleanor. It was the posture of someone who was watching over her. I still live in the house. I know how that sounds, but here is what I have come to believe, after everything. Eleanor Voss was not trying to frighten whoever came after her. She was lonely. She had lived alone, and she had died alone, and she had been undiscovered for 3 days, and her only wish expressed in neat handwriting in a leather journal that no one had opened in 35 years was for someone to stay long enough to truly see the place she had called home. The footsteps have not come back. The lights do not go out. The basement door stays closed, and I have not gone bar. Cut down there. But sometimes, in the early hours of the morning, when the house is very still, I catch that smell faint, old, floral, drifting in from somewhere I can't identify, and I don't find it frightening anymore. I think it's just Eleanor checking in, making sure someone is still there, making sure she isn't alone. 2:59 inches the morning is a strange hour. Too late to still be awake, too early to call it morning. The kind of hour where the line between what's real and what isn't gets a little thin. Whatever you heard tonight, whatever made you look over your shoulder just now, that's between you and whoever's in the room with you. I'm just the one telling the story.